Hey there, Smite fans. Aggro here. What you're about to see is part of what is going to be the next episode of Esports Update. Unfortunately, we recorded Esports Update with the hopes that we'd be able to go forward with the SPL and play on schedule. If you haven't seen the announcement, unfortunately, due to the spread of COVID-19, we're going to have to delay the beginning of the SPL broadcast about 3 weeks before we'll reevaluate. For more information on that, by the way, if you haven't seen, esports.smitegame is the place to go to see that announcement. But some of the parts of Esports Update that we recorded are more relevant now than they will be then. So you're going to get a bit of a half and half here. Half the episode that we saw for Esports Update will be right before SPL goes live. But the stuff about the Smite Challenger circuit and everything there, I'm sure that all of you Smite fans want to see it as soon as possible. So that's what we're here for. So stay tuned. We'll have some of Esports Update coming up soon.
It was a 3-week process to get to the group stages and then a full week of gameplay in order to determine who was going to be in the Smite Challenger circuit this split at the very least. Not this year, just this split. There were some big upsets. To talk about it, we've got John Finch joining us here on the set. Finch, before we go into the nitty-gritty, did this weekend play out the way you expected it from a broad standpoint?
I would say largely we did. I would say that in both regions, in EU and NA, there was one team that I would say was probably a bit of a surprise that didn't make it, and by extension, a team that did make it. That was a bit surprising as well. But I would say largely it went about as we expected.
Well, then let's start in NA with one of those teams that maybe you didn't expect to make it. That was in Group B, and the Houdinis. Yeah. They managed to knock off Hype Unit. Hype Unit doesn't qualify. Houdinis do. Talk to me about this Houdinis team.
It's a bit crazy, right? First thing I say is obviously Hype Unit had some weird circumstances around them. I don't want to make any excuses. That is self-inflicted is how I would describe it. But, they weren't at their full strength. But this Houdinis team continually impressed me throughout the day. They had a really tough schedule that I would say based on what I watched. And I was really impressed with the way that Baronary ended up playing for them in the middle lane in particular. A little bit of experience, not a complete stranger, I wouldn't say, on this roster, right? But I was really impressed with the way that they played. They did not play scared, this team. They were willing to draw out their matches as well until they could find a scenario in which they were able to win. Maybe some longer ones that we would have liked from this team. But I think that I was impressed by them being able to eventually be able to grab that spot.
It was a long weekend for us, to say the least. A couple 45-minute bangers, but hey, that's the fun of it all. As far as Group A goes, we didn't get a chance to broadcast those with our group, but they did get broadcasted overall by the amateur scene. If you want to go see some of those, you can on the VODs. But Basket and the boys, locked and goated. Two of the teams that we expected to make it, they dominated Group A.
They did, and I would have normally said that it was Basket and the boys that would have thought that were the top seed kind of coming in my mind, but I really think it might be Sino's squad, this locked and goated roster, man. They're the ones that keep winning when we keep watching them, we keep finding ways to get it done. I think it's because they're playing around a really strong leader in Sino, and then everyone else is obviously mechanically solid and kind of understands what the game plan is with that team. I think that's what makes them strong. On the other side, I'm actually slightly worried about Basket and the boys. They're one of those teams that we always say can just flip the switch when we need to, but I don't think that that's a winning strategy long term. We saw it happen last year. You kind of got to come every week giving it your all, or when it does get to that moment, it is kind of hard to finally flip that switch.
It feels like Locked and Goated have a ton of talent, just like Basket and the boys,
they do.
But they feel hungrier to me. I mean, it has a lot of names. Pagon, Stewart. These are the guys that have been around the scene for a while but haven't really taken that next step. Maybe this is their year to do it. Just to recap, by the way, for North America, in Group A, we had Basket and the boys, Locked and Goated, and Megxiety Onset qualify into the Smite Challenger circuit. And in Group B, it was Houdinis, Trick Babushka, and Bloogie and the Woogies. Now for Europe, much the same sort of story, Finch. Group A, dominated by some of the best, Belt Slap included.
Yeah.
This is the team, I think, that has that next level of talent and is executing with it, which is not what you can say about another team we'll talk about pretty shortly.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this Belt Slap team is kind of what we expected, right? I feel this always happens down in the minor leagues or the Challenge League, whatever you want to call it. There's a team that on the 10, you keep saying, well, this is going to be the best team, and then they don't quite end up executing at that level. I'm not worried about that with Belt Slap, man. These guys continually come in and take business. This is like the Zeros, Tricks Tank team, right? These guys are coming in, handling their business, and then going home. That's what it feels like from them, right?
Yeah, they're trying to punch in the time card, get all their work done as fast as humanly possible, and wipe their hands of it and go enjoy their day. As for Group B, just F6, a team that kind of popped off. We saw a lot of them that day on broadcast. Captain Odie in the solo lane in particular stood out for me.
Yeah, he's the one that ended up winning me over towards the end of the day. Whatever it was that they put him on, the Vamana ended up being really strong for him, the King Arthur, the Achilles. He seemed to not just dominate the lane, but draw the entire map over to the solo lane. They would fight around him. He'd spread that lead out. He did have one bad game on the Sun Wukong. Stop picking Sun Wukong. But other than that, my man looked really dominant. I mean, just watch the tape back. He didn't have anything he could do because of the pick. It's not his fault.
There are so many picks. Like, if I see
Scylla,
one, why are we picking so much Scylla,
Yeah,
dude?
I don't
Why?
know.
Unbelievable. And then, okay, so we broadcast that whole weekend. All of us on the team are talking about how we don't like Scylla very much right now.
It's not that great.
And then the high-res team in the APAM community tournament picked Scylla, and I was losing my mind.
First rounded, by the way.
Yeah, shocker. Well, obviously, they were going to get first rounded by everybody. But anyways,
Sure.
the pick didn't do them a whole lot of favors in my mind. Freshly Forged, another one of those star-studded teams. They were in Group B. They did qualify, but they got absolutely spanked by the Poppies in the one game. The Poppies go undefeated in group play. Are the Poppies the better team in Group B?
I think right now they kind of have to be, right, just based on the way that they performed. It's so crazy because if you told me coming into the weekend there's going to be 1-2 game set, I might have picked that one. I might have picked it for Freshly Forged. No way I would have picked it for Poppies, but they came in and played really, really well. Freshly Forged to me kind of mirrors Basket and the boys in that way, in that they feel like the team that's waiting to flip the switch. But again, I just don't know if that's viable long term. You end up getting caught like this by a team like the Poppies, who every time they show up play hungry, like they really, really want to win. And I think that's what happened over this last weekend.
I don't know, man. I mean, Outcold did eventually flip the switch, but they needed to call like 4 electricians to get the job done last year.
It would have been really tough. Yeah.
It took them forever. I think that maybe that's just the actual skill level of a team like this at this point. I think it's hard to argue with the evidence. Which team in EU do you think comes closest to belt slap? Because now that we're out of these group stages, we're into just the 6 teams that are in the SCC. I feel like belt slap is the furthest apart from everybody else.
I'd say so. I think belt slap are that upper echelon. I do think that Freshly Forged has a chance to challenge them if they come in and they're taking these matches seriously every week. Obviously, I can't know for sure, what their mental state is, but just based on what I expect from them and then what we see in terms of the results, I would have to think that there's probably something else going on there. So if they're playing at that level every time, then I think they could challenge them.
Keep your eye on Cold Llamas as well.
Yeah,
that team has a lot of former SPL stars, so you know that they're going to have at least something to say as far as competition goes. Finch, thank you very much for joining us and talking about the Smite Challenger Circuit. Of course, all of your favorite teams that did not make it into the SCC are going to the SOC, so you can check them out before broadcast on Fridays. Stay tuned here on Esports Update. We'll be right back.
As always, you can find more updates at Smite Pro on Twitter. If you want to get a hold of me directly, at Agro on Twitter is the place to go. But we'll see you next time here on Esports Update.